Shabbat Shalom, Mishpacha. This is the Kohen speaking. Okay, we've just had a beautiful celebration of the Festival of Weeks, which is also popularly known as Pentecost. And Shavuot obviously is the time that we were given the covenant of the Torah through Moses when God descended on the Mount Sinai, which is in the land of Saudi Arabia today, not in Egypt, by the way. So, before we kind of get into it, I think it would be very appropriate to do some prayers, and then we can get into the somewhat into the Torah portion. I don't want to spend too much time in there because I would like to have relevant messages that kind of intertwines both with the Torah portion and with your lives generally. I think that's kind of important. So let's start with the book of Psalms, and we will read Psalm 14 first. The fool has said in his heart, there is no Elohim. They are corrupt, they have done abominable works, and there is none that does good. Yud-Heh-Wah-Heh looked down from the Shemaim, from the heavens, upon the children of men, to see if there were any that did understand and seek Elohim, seek God. They are all gone aside. They are all together become filthy. There is none that does good, no, not one. Have all the practitioners of worthless idols, paying homage, have no knowledge? Who eat up my people as they eat lachem, and call not upon Yud-Heh-Wah-Heh? They were in great fear. There they were in great fear, for Elohim is in the generation of the righteous. You have shamed the counsel of the poor, because Yud-Heh-Wah-Heh is his refuge. Oh, that the rescue of Israel will come out of Zion. When Yud-Heh-Wah-Heh brings back the captivity of his people, Yaakov shall rejoice and Israel shall be glad. Baruch Hashem. We will now go to Psalm 17. Hear the right, O Yud-Heh-Wah-Heh, attend to my cry. Give ear to my prayer from lips without deceit. Let my sentence come forth from your presence. Let your eyes behold the things that are equal. You have tried my heart. You have visited me in the night. You have tried me and shall find nothing. I have determined that my mouth shall not sin. Concerning the works of men, by the word of your lips, I have guarded my paths of the destroyer. Hold up my goings in your path, that my foot does not slip. I have called upon you, for you will hear me. O El, incline your ear to me, and hear my speech. Show your marvelous loving kindness, O you that rescued by your right hand those which put their trust in you from them that rise up against them. Guard me as a pupil of your eye. Hide me under the shadow of your wings, from the wicked that oppresses me, from my deadly enemies who surround me. They are enclosed in their own fat. With their mouth they speak proudly. They have now surrounded us in our steps. They have set their eyes bowing down to the earth, like a lion that is ready to tear his prey, and as it were a young lion crouching in a secret place. Arise, O Yud-Heh-Wah-Heh, disappoint him, cast him down, rescue my soul from the wicked, which is your sword, from men which are at your hand, O Yud-Heh-Wah-Heh, from men of the world, which have their portion in this life, whose bellies you fill with treasures of this world. They have many children, and leave the wealth to their children. As for me, I will behold your face in righteousness. I shall be satisfied when I awake with your likeness. Okay, now we'll go to Psalm 191. 119, and we shall today be looking at Sameach in Psalm 119. Let me get to Sameach. Where are we? I think I have paused it. Okay. Here we go. Kaf Lamed Mim Nun Sameach. I hate vain thoughts, but your Torah do I love. You are my hiding place and my shield. I trust in your word. Depart from me, you evildoers, for I will keep the commandments of my power, of my God, of my Elohim. Uphold me according to your word, that I may live, and let me not be ashamed of my trust. Hold me up, and I shall be safe, and I will have respect to your statutes continually. You have trodden down all them that err from your statutes, for their deceit is falsehood. For their deceit is falsehood. You put away all the wicked of the earth like dross. Therefore I love your testimonies. My flesh trembles for fear of you, and I'm afraid of your judgments. Baruch Hashem, Adonai, Baruch Hashem, Todah Rabbah. Thank you, Abba, that you have given us a beautiful, beautiful festival of Shavuot, Feast of Weeks, Pentecost, and we celebrated it. We give thanks that you descended with your glory in the ancient times, where the whole of Israel stood under the mountain, and where Moses stood, and so did Aaron and his sons, and you revealed your glory. You made a covenant with the house of Israel, and the covenant is forever. And we thank you. We thank you, Abba. We're reminded that this is the time for us to renew our covenant of marriage with you. Israel became the bride, and you became the husband. We thank you, Abba, that you have been faithful to our people, that you have faithfully made the provisions for our people. Wherever they are in the earth today, you have made provisions for them, those that live in the land of Israel and those that live in the diaspora. You have made provisions for them. You have made protections for them. You provide protection. You provide food, clothing, shelter. For this past week, as we go our way, you have provided the transportation. You have provided the necessary amenities that we needed, and the money and the food and the clothing. We thank you. We're gracious. We thank you that you are ever with us, that your testimonies are true and for sure. Not a single word that you said can be judged. Your words are true. I testify to this, that your words are true and trustworthy and to be trusted forever. Thank you, Father. I thank you for those people this week who have renewed their covenant with you, their marital contracts with you, and who have said that we will serve you, the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They want to serve you, and they want to be faithful to you. And we also pray and we give thanks that those that you have removed from the camp, for whatever reason they left the camp, it's okay. We have no gripe, we have no remorse, and we have no hate. We love all those that are in our midst, and we love those that left. And we say thank you for the time that you have spent in the camp with us, and thank you, and may your paths be enlightened as you go. We thank you, Abba, and we thank you for all the blessings that you have bringing into our lives. Tremendous blessings, Abba, tremendous blessings. All the promises that you made are true, and I don't speak for myself, but I speak for others that who may have doubted, but are now beginning to see those promises unfold. And I thank you, Abba, for your gracious words, for your Torah, for your prophets, and especially for Moses the prophet, who wrote the Torah down for our remembrance, so that we may look back and we may have the scrolls the scriptures that we gave, that we could read them and try to get an understanding. We thank you. Baruch Hashem. May your name be glorified. Amen. Amen. Okay. So it is, what I want to speak about briefly first is current goings on in our nation, in the U.S. I think it's kind of appropriate that we speak about that. As you know, that we currently are dealing with what they call the debt crisis. Okay, the debt ceiling crisis, I should say, where America's politicians, senators, will have to decide that whether, I think the decision's already made, but it's not yet made public between the relevant parties, that they are going to raise the debt ceiling. And so what happens, politics are being played on both sides, trying to get their things that they want to be done in order to allow the other party to make the laws that are necessary for the debt ceiling. And what that means is that whilst they talk, whilst they decide, what we're going to do, how much are we going to raise the debt and all that, and they talk about the default, and as you know that whilst they did talk about the default, the dollar has become stronger and stronger against all currencies of the world. It's really become strong. Gold became weaker and weaker as a result, because there was no solution yet presented for the debt numbers to be raised. So that affects gold negatively, whilst it affects dollar positively. So the dollar keeps rising and gold keeps falling. So that's kind of where we are, and that affected other nations as well, in Europe and other places, because stock markets get affected by that. It does affect stocks. It makes more uncertainty. They talk about default and they say, oh well, if America defaults, millions of jobs will be lost. And they paint a real bleak picture. Okay, media always will paint a bleak picture. That's what the media is. Most of the media is negative, as you know, and they like to paint a very bleak picture of this so-called dollar ceiling. But and I know that America is not going to default. This is just playing politics. That's all. Nothing more than that. All these politicians play politics, and that's to be understood like that. So we will have a solution for this debt ceiling to be raised more than likely early June, possibly earlier. But like I said, that this is pretty normal politics. It affects the gold prices. It affects the dollar going up. Well, if you want to buy gold, then probably you'll be happy, because gold prices have come down. And if you want to buy dollars with foreign currencies, well, you'll get more. If you're going abroad, you'll get more to the dollar. If you're buying the dollar, you'll have to pay more money towards it, your money, so it's a little bit more expensive. That's basically all that means in relevant terms. Other than that, I don't think there was any politics happening in America. These are the main politics that have been talked about in the media day in and day out. They like to thrash it out, and I usually like to tell my students, don't waste time with it. You read the headline, that is enough. Now you know what's going on, and you can get on with your life, and let them get on with whatever they are doing, because it's nothing more than politics. It's politics, and that's it really. I mean, nothing more can be said about it. Politics, just to talk about politics, and it gets nowhere. It's like ping pong ball. They bounce it to the Democrats, and the Democrats bounce it back to the Republicans, and back and forth it goes. There is no change. Okay, politicians do that. They love to do that. They love to play politics, and they love to create these kind of scenes. But they really are, in the scheme of things, meaningless. they really have no bearing on reality, other than that, they're playing with a lot of people's lives. Actually, they are playing with a lot of people's lives, for good or for bad. But in the end, the right decisions would be made and should be made that will not affect people in a negative way. I mean, that's basically the way I look at it. So that's that. Now, like I said, the Parsha today talks about. I mean, if I may open up the Parsha, it's a book of Numbers with the Var. Now, with the Var, although translated Numbers, with the Var means, and he gave words. And then in chapter 1 it says, and Yahoshua spoke to Moshe in the wilderness of Sinai, in the tent of the appointed times, on the first day of the second month, in the second year, after they came out of the country of Mitzrayim, which is Egypt, saying, take the census of the congregation of the children of Israel, after their mishpachatim, their families, by the bait, the houses of the Abthim, for fathers, with the number of their names, every male by their polls, from 20 years old and upward, all that are able to go forth to war in Israel. You and Aaron shall count them by their armies. Okay, basically, this was a time that an account was ordered by God, and so Moses went ahead and did the count. Now, remember, when we do our festivals, we always are asked to bring an offering to the Kohanim, to the priest in the gate, so that God may use that to bless you. Okay? So, never come empty-handed. Never come empty-handed, and any festival, always send in an offering so that you may receive a blessing from God during that time. It's a very important time that God can bless you. So remember that this is not just talk. This is actually real. And as I speak, it's happening right now. And I can't speak about what's happening right now, but some of my students are getting tremendous blessings right now. And I'm not in a mode to tell you what that is at this point. Maybe another time I will tell you what kind of blessings they are getting. So, in the meantime, I wanted to talk about, because this Parsha talks about counting the different tribes. That's what was happening. They were in the desert, and God said to conduct a census, and then Moses counted men of draftable age. That was 20 to 60 years, and the tribe of Levi was there in smaller numbers, who, males who are able to go to war. And the Levites, the Levies, they are also supposed to look after the sanctuary, broken down into 3 different groups. The Kohathites, who carry the sanctuary's vessels. We have these are the 3 different clans. One clan dismantles and transports the sanctuary, which is the tent, and then reassembles it the next place they stop. The Kohathites, they will carry the sanctuary's vessels on their shoulders, the coverings. The Gershonites, they're in charge of the tapestries and roof coverings. The families of Merari, the 3rd clan of the Levites, they transported its wall panels and pillars to its north beside the sanctuary's entrance. Beside the Levites, there were the 12 tribes that camped around the 4 groups of in 4 groups of 3 tribes each. To the east were Judah, Issachar, and Zabulon, and to the south was Reuben, Shimon, and Gad. To the west was Ephraim, Manasseh, and Benjamin, and to the north was Dan, Asher, and Naphtali. So this was the kind of formation that they kept, and each tribe had their own Nasi, their own leader, and their own flag, and their own color and emblem. So it's kind of important to note. Now, what I wanted to talk about from here is importance in not so much in numbers, but in signs and symbols. What symbols are carried and what it actually meant, and so on. Also in this Parsha, there is the laws of the Sota, the wayward wife, and the Nazir, who lives an austere life, who is not allowed to drink wine or have other pleasures in life for a time that he designates. This was also the time that the priestly blessing that Aaron and his sons had to conduct upon the house of Israel. During this time, the princes, the noblemen of the different tribes, they had to bring inaugural sacrifices, and they were to be offered for their relevant clans. People during this time also complained about the manna which God gave from the skies. Then God sent them, because they wanted to eat meat, then God responded by sending birds for them to eat, quails, and then he punished them with a mighty blow for their ingratitude. During this time, Miriam, the sister of Moses and Aaron, she criticized Aaron and Moses both for having separated from his wife. Well, actually, it wasn't just Miriam, it was Miriam and Aaron. The two criticized Moses for having separated from his wife. Miriam was then punished with Sara'at, some form of leprosy, and we then find that Moses had to pray for her to God and ask for forgiveness and to ask for healing. The spies were sent out by God to scout out the land at this point, and the people were frightened because some of the spies that came back, majority of them actually, they reported that the land was inhabited by giants. And because they were disobedient, because they were whining and they were complaining, God then responded by punishing them for the next 40 years to spend spinning in the desert, going round and round in circles, until all the adult males of that generation perished. And then the children grew up, became young adults, and those were the ones that actually entered the land. Other than only 2 people from the first generation entered the land, that was Joshua and Caleb, the only 2 people who were the only 2 survivors to enter the land. Other things are mentioned in this Parsha: the mutiny against Moses and Aaron by Korah, who was one of the Levites, Dathan and Aviram. These were the ringleaders of mutiny against the prophet and the high priest, and God responded by bringing these ringleaders to accountability by opening up a big hole in the earth, like a pothole, and majority of them were swallowed up, including their families. So some really punishment was going forth at this point as well. We were also introduced during this time to the red heifer. Its ashes mixed with water and sprinkled upon a person who becomes impure. During this point, Miriam died in the journey, and the miraculous well of water that followed Miriam and the Israelites used to drink water from in the desert, it basically disappeared after her death. And so God told Moses to speak to a rock which will bring water. Instead of speaking to the rock, he struck it in anger. So as a result, God tells him that he and Aaron will not live to enter the Holy Land. Aaron died and was buried at Hor, and Moses also died in what's today known as Jordan. So their graves remain unmarked to this day. We don't know exactly where they were buried, although Muslims have actually made some locations where they believe that Moses and Aaron could have been buried. There are like spots they believe, but we don't know where those graves are. These spots could just simply be just markers, just for posterity's sake. We also notice that when Israel tried to enter the land, Balak, the king of Moab, he hired Balaam, who was a magician and a soothsayer. He was a Gentile prophet, and he was hired to curse Israel. And then God discouraged him, and he caused an angel to stand in the way of Balaam's donkey, and Balaam brought sacrifices in his in his magic. He brought different sacrifices to curse Israel. However, every time he opened his mouth to curse Israel, God sent forth a blessing. Then we have the incident with the Israelite men who were having illicit affairs with the Moabite women, and God punished Israel with a plague. And this is the time that one of the priests, he zealously slayed the two people. There was a Moabite woman, and there was one man of Israel that was slayed together. It was Phinehas. Phinehas slayed them both in anger, and God had sent a plague. After that, God stopped the plague. There's lots of other details, in this Parsha. We also know that there was the daughters of Zelophehad who had asked to be given their portion of their inheritance because they had no brothers. Their father had died. They had no brothers, and it is believed that their father was a man that was stoned to death for disobeying the Sabbath law and doing some kind of work. He was lighting a fire with his sticks, and it's not believed that just lighting a fire because it's feeling cold. It was fire to actually make something, it was something that you can make and sell. It was a work thing, and God had prohibited Israel not to do that on a Sabbath. So various other details are mentioned in this Parshas, and various other things are told. I want to actually speak about, in this particular Parsha, or in this particular lecture, I want to speak about the crows and the eagles. So in life, there are the crows, the common people, and there are the eagles, the uncommon people. So what is the difference? Well, and why do I call an eagle versus crows? Well, a lot of the people in this world can be seen as crows. Their flights are very limited. They fly very low, whereas eagles, they fly very high. Now, you probably have heard that Israel's sign in the Bible, usually, a lot of the times in the New Testament as well, is mentioned as a lion. However, by the way, that is not the main sign of Israel. Unfortunately, due to bad translations, sometimes even a different sign that was given was misinterpreted. In most of your Bibles today, I don't think you're going to find the right one, except if you were to purchase the Bible that I translated, the Hidden Truths Hebraic Scrolls, or the Abrahamic Faith Bible that you can purchase from Amazon. I think you should all purchase it and have a copy of it, even though you may use a different Bible for purposes of comparison. Maybe you use King James Version or NIV for comparison, but you must have this because this has the right translation. And one place, Israel is actually called an eagle. Did you know that? Israel was called as an eagle, but most of your Bibles translated as a lion, and that's actually a bad translation. Why? And I can prove that very easily, because I can go to Genesis 49:9, where Israel is called, and where the tribe of Judah. Typically, you've heard of this, right? You've heard the tribe of Judah is called a lion. Well, actually, not really, because in 49:9, which is the first occurrence of Judah, they're not called a lion; they're called a young eagle. Yehuda is a young eagle from the prey. So when God describes Israel in another passage, God describes the whole of Israel as an eagle. And this is first part, as I explained to you. This same wording, same Hebrew wording is used in both passages, whilst I don't know why the translators decided to translate one as eagle and the second one as something else. Pretty poor though, if you think about it, because it says that Yehuda is a young eagle from the prey. My son, ye have gone up, he bows down, he stooped down as an eagle, and as a lion, who shall rouse him? So he is called both an eagle, he's called an eagle first, and a lion next. That what most people don't know. And even God said, in another passage, God said, you have seen what I did to the Mitzrayim, to the Egyptians, how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. So, by the way, that is the main sign for Israel, is an eagle, not a lion, as most people don't even know this. So, similarly, we find in the book of Numbers, where God describes Israel as, he says, behold, the people shall rise up as a great lion and soar as an eagle. He shall not lie down until he eat of the prey and drink the blood of the slain. Now, here again, as you notice that as God described in the book of Genesis, first he described the one of the tribes as eagle and then as a lion. Here the whole house of Israel is described as a great lion and then described as an eagle. Now, people forget that. What does that mean? Well, do you know that most of the nations of the world in the past, they had eagle as a sign? The Romans had it, the Germans had it, the Americans have the eagle as a sign today as well. So eagle is a very important symbol. Now, this is why I say, are you going to soar high? Eagles soar high. They are free. They're not chained. They don't soar low. Crows, they cannot even fly halfway as much as eagles can. So if crows wanted to chase eagles, they won't get very far. Eagles will be rising up very, very high, right up there in the skies. And the eagle, when it swoops down, it can pick up a small, fair-sized goat or lamb. It can just swoop down and pick it up and take it away. It's very, very powerful, very strong. You may have seen the bald eagle in America do this, and some other versions of eagles that can do that. So, what are you? Are you an eagle or are you a crow? Most people today are nothing but crows. And what do crows do? Well, when the analogy of a crow is that common crows don't really do much anything. They just fly low and they just quack 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 all the time, and that's about as much as they do. And that's compared to common people, the symbolism to common people, what do? They quack like a crow, meaning they just go from one house to another, just bearing tails, and they really don't have no direction. So when I say a crow, I mean a symbol is for a directionless person. Doesn't have direction. He's bound. He is chained. He cannot fly high. He's not a leader. He doesn't have the leader capacity and capabilities, or even a warrior type person. He's not a outlooker, because even to be like a warrior type person, you have to fly high. You have to be like a sniper. You have to think. You have to be, have those qualities that only an eagle has. So, what would you want to be? Would you want to be a crow, or would you want to be an eagle? Well, God described Israel as an eagle. That is your preferred choice, to be like an eagle. Why an eagle is simple. Let's say that crows, I'm talking about the common things in crows. Common things meaning that, things that are common in people, generally speaking. This is my point of view. There are some commonalities, and those common things of crows is that they, ravens, although they are smart, crows are smart, but having said that, they have, they cannot soar high. And did you know that crows hold funerals for the deceased, just like humans? And crows have big brains. Crows can make tools. Crows can hide their food. So crows have, abilities, different abilities. But when you come to an eagle, eagle can surpass the crow, far surpass the crow in its ability than any crow. So why be an eagle and why not be a crow? Well, an eagle is very astute. An eagle can see its prey a long distance off, and that's something that most birds can't do. Why would you want to be a crow? Because why would you not want to be a crow? Well, eagles are much larger than crows. They have big wingspans. Some of them up to 7 foot, compared to crows, who have a wingspan of about 2 foot. Eagles have very, very sharp sight, very sharp, and I don't think many people realize that. This is how eagles can swoop down. This is why I think there's a lot of stories that are made up around the eagle. The higher the eagle flies, the harder it is for the crow to breathe. And then due to the lack of oxygen, the crow falls away. In other words, the crow can try to climb up, but the crow cannot keep up with the eagle. Why? Because he can't breathe. The crow can't breathe, and so it falls off from the eagle. Eagle has no match against the crow. There's really no match. Like I said, crow is considered common, where the eagle is considered far superior. Now, the differences. The eagle is a planner. The eagle plans. The eagle plans its prey. The eagle plans what it needs to do, and it follows the plan. Okay, it follows the plan to the letter. If it's going to hunt, it's going to follow the plan to catch its hunt. Crow, on the other hand, is not such a great planner. The crow can just forage for food here and there in the field and from the garbage, and that's how the crows feed themselves. But think about it. If you were an eagle, you will be a planner. You will have sharp intuition, sharp sight. And if you plan your life, where would your life be? Now, imagine that you want to manifest, you want to bring something into your life. You have a desire. Everybody has a desire. Let's say that you have a desire and you want to bring something to your life. Would you want to be like an eagle, or would you want to be like a crow? Well, if you're like a crow, you know what's going to happen? You're going to give up part way. Whereas if you're an eagle, you're going to go all the way. You're going to carry it out all the way. You're not going to give up. That's the other quality of an eagle. So why is it important to be like that? Well, the thing is this. You rather be a planner. Like, let's take your life. You go to school, you go to university, high school, college, etc. You come out, so you plan your life. You say, okay, I'm going to go to school, then college, or here they call it high school, and then I'm going to go to university, and then I'm going to become doctor or engineer or scientist or whatever. So you plan your life. So if you're an eagle, you would write your plan down. You write it down what you want. Always, a wise guy, a wise woman will always write down their plans, what they want to do in their life, and at what stage of their life, where they want to be. like, when you're 21. When I was 21, I wrote down what I want to do and where I want to be when I'm 25, when I'm 30. I set stages in my life. Where will I be at 25? Where will I be at 30, etc. And only planners can do that. That means you are an eagle. You're not a crow. And crows, what do the crows do? The crows don't do those plans. They just wander here and there, and if they get there, they might call it part luck, but otherwise they just don't get there. Majority of the world today, by the way, lives in a robotic state. Now I'm going to tell you an interesting story. I'm going to flip a little bit. I had a friend, and he lives in England, and I won't give you his name, but I'll just tell you that one day I had a conversation with him. This is a very interesting conversation. I asked him a question. I said, when I go to the Islamic world, I talk to Muslim families, all the time, and they tell me, some people tell me that, hey, a lady says that she wanted to have a child, wasn't having a child for many years, so she went to a shrine and she prayed to God, to Allah, and she got a child, whatever child she wanted. Or another person, they were ill, they went to a shrine, they made some kind of donation, and they were healed of their illness. So I asked my Christian friend, this was a very astute, knowledgeable Christian, and he was very good with psychology as well. Philosophy. So I asked him, I said, tell me, if Christianity is true, and if according to you, Islam has problems in terms of its faith, why is it that Muslim women, and men of course as well, especially women, I said, why is it that they go to a shrine, or maybe they just pray to God at home, and they say that we will give an offering of a lamb or a sheep if you give me a son, and it happens and they get the son. Why is it that they get their prayers answered? Similarly, on the other hand, there may be a Catholic woman or man, and they go to Rome, or they go to Lourdes in France, and they pray in Lourdes in France, or they go and dip in the water for a healing, and they get healed. I said, if these religions, if these people, their ideas or their belief system is false, why does God answer their prayer? So his answer was this. He said to me that God is merciful. He answers their prayers because God is merciful. I kind of, took his answer, and I didn't question it. Because, he was older than me, he was mature. Out of respect, I didn't want to question him. But I kind of disagree with his answer, by the way. Yeah, I disagree with his answer. And today I was having this conversation with a friend, a student, and I was telling him that story, how he picked up one passage in the Bible. He thought he was very knowledgeable. And he came back to me and said, oh, in the Bible, there is a passage that where God says that he mentioned that you can eat unclean meat. We were talking about kosher, clean meat, and he said, there's a passage in the Bible where you can do that. I said, really? You're telling me that I can go and eat pork? And he kind of didn't say it outright, but he was implicitly saying yes to that. So anyway, I questioned him exactly where is this passage, and he told me where the passage was, and I started to laugh. I said that that's the, he was kind of very knowledgeable in debates and things like that, and I said to him that if that's what your knowledge, if that is what your knowledge is about food, food that is mentioned in the Bible, then I'm afraid that you got it very wrong. Because I said it's not talking about unclean meat as in pork or a horse or a camel. It's not talking about that. And I said it's actually talking about something very different. He didn't know that because he didn't actually know the intricate laws that were, kind of, there were laws that we interpreted, the Levites. We knew, the Kohanim knew how to interpret those laws properly. Everybody couldn't interpret those laws. And I said, no, what you're calling unclean is actually not what you're thinking. God didn't say, hey, bring unclean meat into your gates and you can eat it. I said, let me explain to you what that passage was all about. I said, that passage, which is called, the meat is called common, I said, it's really talking about an animal, like a kosher animal, and we bring the kosher animal. And I'll tell you where the passage is. You're going to laugh when you read this. Passage is in Deuteronomy, book of Deuteronomy, chapter 12, verse 15, where it says that if you slaughter and eat meat within all your gates, whatever your heart desires. It doesn't tell you here what meat is this. So he implied that you could eat pork, you could eat, crows and whatever, and snakes and whatnot. Meat is meat in that sense, isn't it? I guess crow is a bird, or, so we don't count that. But meat meaning that you can eat a horse, you can eat pork and other things, according to his understanding at that point. So he goes, whatever your heart desires. I said, really? He says, according to the blessing, the Bible he was reading was probably KJV or NIV. He said, according to the blessing of the Lord your God, which has given you, the unclean and the clean may eat of it, of the gazelle and the deer alike. So he's saying to me, did you see that? That God says that you shall eat unclean meat? I said, I started laughing. I said, you know what that actually means? It's not talking about pork. I said, it's not talking about a horse. I said, did you not know that those are explicitly mentioned as you're not supposed to eat them? Why would God tell you in one place you're not supposed to eat them, and another place, in Leviticus it says don't eat them, and in Deuteronomy will tell you eat them? I said, you got it totally wrong. You're actually clueless. I'm sorry. You're clueless about what the law is. I said, here's the law. What the law says is, there is a man in Israel, and the man says, I want to give for an offering to God my one sheep. So he brings a sheep to me and he says, dear Kohen, or he says, Shalom Kohen, I want to give this sheep as an offering to God. Can you please slaughter this, butcher this and offer it to God on my behalf that he may bless me? And I look at the sheep, and the sheep has a wart on it, or it has a little cut on it. And I look at the sheep and I say to him, I'm sorry, sir, but this sheep cannot be given to God. It actually has a cut on it, or it has some kind of wound. So this sheep is actually technically, guess what word? Unclean. I said, that is what God is telling. So I explained to my friend that God was talking about unclean in regards to blemished meat. Meaning, if you brought a sheep, if you brought a cow, and it had a blemish, even like a wart on it, or a cut, or a wound, and I would look at it as a Kohen and I'll say, sorry, we cannot sacrifice this. God does not permit this. However, that is still kosher meat. It's not for slaughter, not for the tabernacle, not for where the temple was. You couldn't slaughter that cow or that lamb in the temple because it was not permitted, as it had this cut in it, wound. It was wounded a little bit, or maybe it had disease. So this wasn't what we call spotless. So the book of Deuteronomy spoke about spotless versus spotted meat. And that's what it called unclean. And Gentiles, when they read our Bible, they get it all screwed up in their heads and they think it's talking about pigs and rats and horses. So I explained to him that that sheep that was spotted, it had to go away, and yes, Israelites could eat it outside, outside the temple. It wouldn't be slaughtered in the temple. It could be slaughtered outside, and Israelites could happily eat it in their gates. No problem. But you could not bring that into the gate of the temple and slaughter it because it had a blemish. It was unclean meat. But when God says you can take the clean and the unclean, He's saying that those animals that have blemishes, you can take them outside the temple and eat them to your heart's content. Because, lamb is kosher still, even if it has a little spot on it, still kosher. That was a definition that I explained to him. And the poor guy had he didn't know what to, he didn't know he was coming or going. He just didn't know he was coming or going. He had no answer for me. This man was talking to, having a lot of debates. He was having a lot of debates with Muslims. But when he had this debate with me, I thrashed him in 3 seconds. I said, next time when you come to me and you want to debate with me, think very carefully what you're saying about the Torah. Then I will explain it to you. So there's a couple of occasions that I had to correct him. Once on the Sabbath, once on this meat being clean or unclean and the differences. And then after that, he never debated me again. Actually, one day he came to me and said, "Oh, I started to keep the Sabbath." So being a Christian, he actually started to keep the Sabbath. And he was telling me how some Jews in London, he saw them eating a pork sandwich because they were not keeping kosher. They were being doing things that are not permitted. So I said to him, maybe they do that, and that's their business. I'm not going to go judging them. Let that be between them and God. But I said, me, forget it. It's not going to happen. So anyhow, my point being that the Bible has to be interpreted in the correct light by the correct people. Everybody's not a master of how to read and interpret the scriptures. Similarly, I wanted to talk about analogies and similes. And we were having this discussion about the law of manifesting. And I explained that, listen to this carefully. This is very good discussion that I had with another student. And the discussion was this, that we had a story in the Bible where Isaac is now old. And he asked his son Esau. He says, "Esau, my son, go and hunt a deer and bring it for me to eat," because he loved eating deer. And quickly, Isaac's wife, she says to her son Jacob, who's a second born, she says, "Hey, Jacob, you quickly go and fetch me a goat and roast it, and you take it into your father and you pretend to be Esau." So she puts a little, a hairy skin on him, on his arms, because his arms were smooth, as it says, and the brother had a hairy the brother was hairy, much more hairy than him. So the story goes that he came to the father, and the father was blind, or at least technically blind, couldn't see, and so he ends up getting the blessing by falsifying himself as Esau. When Esau comes, Esau's blessing's already gone. And so Esau's very angry. Esau says that my brother unrightly took my blessing. But the brother had basically, had taken the blessing because the mother said so, number one. Number two, Esau had already sold his birthright to Jacob. So Jacob actually technically had a right to do that. And so I wanted to bring a philosophical thing from that story. So you really like it when I bring the philosophical side of it. Isaac in this story, okay, Isaac was a real man, of course, in the real story, but let's look at it philosophically. What is philosophically Isaac? What is philosophically Jacob? And what is philosophically Esau? Philosophically, Isaac is your consciousness, okay? Because your consciousness is technically blind, okay? Your consciousness doesn't care, it doesn't have eyes, it doesn't see, and it only has ears. Think about this very carefully. I want to, give you a little information here. It's really good. And the consciousness only has ears, doesn't have eyes, it doesn't care. Now, if you ask your consciousness is technically God, okay? God that lives within you. People refer to it as also as the subconscious. So this consciousness is Isaac, symbolically and philosophically speaking. So what is Jacob and what is Esau? Jacob is the desire. You may have a desire, like you want a car, you want $1 million, you want a nice home, you want a beautiful wife or a husband. So that's your desire. Or maybe you want health and other things. travel, so on and so forth. So you bring a desire. So the desire is Jacob. So you bring the desire to consciousness. And the consciousness, remember, as I said, is blind. It doesn't see. It doesn't judge. It doesn't care you're rich or you're poor. It doesn't care you're in a home or homeless. It will give you whatever you want to ask it, provided you get to it in the right way. That is the story of Isaac, Esau, and Jacob, philosophically speaking. So Jacob was the one who got the blessing. When Esau came, he started to cry, and he didn't get the original blessing. He got a secondary blessing. So what does that mean? It means that we are talking about consciousness. We are talking about your desire that goes to your conscious, and your conscious can fulfill that desire. The consciousness doesn't care, rich, poor, living in a big house, living in a small house, don't care. Homeless, homeful, jobless, jobful, it doesn't care. Whatever you ask for it, it will give you. Once something goes to your subconscious, once something goes to your consciousness will give it to you. That is Isaac. Technically, what is Isaac? Isaac represents God. Okay? That's what it represents. So then the Jacob represents your side that gets the desire. Esau represents the side that does not get the desire. And in the New Testament, remember I said that it has ears, but it does not have eyes. It's blind. That's why Isaac is called blind. Now, in the Bible, Jesus says, "He that has an ear, let him hear." So what does that mean, he that has an ear? Everybody has an ear. He that has an ear. He didn't say ears. He didn't say he that has two ears. He says he that has an ear. Very, very interesting that he should mention that he that has an ear. And Luke 5:24, it says that, "But that you may know that the Son of Man has power on earth to forgive sins." He said to the man who was paralyzed, "I say to you, arise, take up your bed and go to your house." Okay? And the same story is mentioned in the book of Matthew 9:6. Again, it says the same story, and I read it I'm going to read it from the NIV here. And 9:6 basically says, "But that you may know that the Son of Man has power on earth to forgive sins. Then he said to the paralytic, Arise, take up your bed and go to your house. And he arose and departed to his house." And so, whilst he is saying this, he says, "Now when the multitude saw it, they marveled and glorified God, who had given such power to men." And so, as Jesus is going around, Yeshua is going around performing these countless miracles, then he makes this saying, "He that has an ear, let him hear." And so, what does that mean? Everybody has an ear, right? Because you're going to say, well, everybody has an ear. What do you mean, he that has an ear? Everybody has two ears, not just an ear. Well, actually, Jesus was not referring to a physical ear. Okay? Jesus was referring to a spiritual ear. This is totally different. Spiritual ear versus physical ear. So what does that mean? Did you know that in Judaism, in the Bible, the ears are a reference to the priesthood? Did you know that? Yes. Whenever the ears are mentioned in the Torah or in the prophets' writings, when God says ear, God is talking about the priesthood. Okay? So here when Jesus spoke about the ear, he that has an ear, singular, he that has an ear, let him, meaning let him or her hear. What is the ear? The ear is your subconscious. It's your consciousness. So when Jesus was speaking about the ear, he was speaking about your consciousness. He was not speaking about your physical ears. Everybody has physical ears. But how many of you can reach your consciousness? 98% of the people, I should say. Well, let's just say 95. 95% of the people of the world live a robotic life. They walk like robots. They're always appealing to outside, for help, for doing things, always appealing outside. they never appeal within. They never appeal within. Why? Because God is within you. God is not in a mosque, God is not in a church, and God is definitely not in a broken temple in Israel. Okay? God is not there. So, where is God? God is consciousness. Where is consciousness? Consciousness is within you. So, where should you be appealing to God? Think about that for a few moments. So, what was Jesus referring to? He that has an ear. So, what is the story of Isaac, Jacob, and Esau? It is all about the consciousness. On a philosophical level, the story speaks about you and your consciousness and your desire. How to get it. That's basically, we can sum it up. And it starts in the Torah. Now, let me come back to the story, original story that I gave you of why is a Muslim or a Catholic woman's prayer answered, for maybe a child or healing, by going to a shrine or standing before Mary, the statue of Mary, and praying. The reason for that is very simple. It is your belief. It's not because you're a Muslim, you're a Christian, you're a Buddhist, you're a Hindu. No. It is your belief system that causes it. So, where does the belief system come from? The belief system original model. Remember, all religions of the world have a man behind it. I know of only one religion. I don't call it a religion, I call it a covenant faith. I only know of one faith where God came down. It wasn't a man, by the way. Moses did not say to the people, hey, I went out in the desert and I met God, and God told me to go and bring you all in and listen to him. No, Moses didn't do that. God actually descended on Mount Sinai in front of the whole house of Israel. Only one time event in the history of the world. The whole of Israel heard God's trembling, and the whole of Israel was trembling and said, you speak to God. They're saying to Moses, you speak to God. We are afraid. They actually all witnessed Israel, the only nation on this earth. Israel is a nation that witnessed God's presence, His glory. No other nation on this earth witnessed that presence, by the way. Every other religion that is made subsequently, Christianity, Islam, then you have the different sects of Christianity, you have Jehovah's Witness, Mormonism, and any other religion. They all have a man behind it, and the man gives a story about how, like, for instance, in Mormonism, Joseph Smith is given the story. He gives a story about how he found, how he had these angels describe these tablets to him. And similarly, in Islamic stories, the Prophet of Islam goes to a cave and he has a revelation through the angel Gabriel. On the other hand, in Christianity, it is believed that Jesus, a man according to their understanding, he died on the cross and he raised himself on the third day, therefore they say he's God. Again, a man, right? So they take all that analogy from a man. Now, Torah doesn't do that. We don't say, oh, I believe because Moses said so. No, we don't say that. Have you ever heard a Jew say that? That I believe because Moses said so? No. The reason why the house of Israel believes in God, because God descended on the mountain and the whole house of Israel saw the glory of God. It wasn't physical man. There was no physical man. God is not a man, by the way. Doesn't the Torah tell you that? God is not a man that he should lie. Right? God is not a man that he should lie. So that should be plainly obvious. So God is not a man, and Moses has this conversation with God. He says, Moses is the only prophet in the Bible that is mentioned as saying he spoke to God face to face. Well, what? Does God have a face? No, God has faces, plural. Okay? Panaim, he has faces. So, what did Moses actually see when he went up there in the mountain? Moses spoke to the glory, the light. He saw a light. He did not see a form like of a man or an animal or something else or a bird. He didn't see no forms. And Moses is told that, The Torah mentions it, that Moses saw no form of God. At one point, Moses says he wants to see God, and God says, I'll pass by the mountain and you see my shoulder. That's about as much as Moses sees. In other words, God temporarily took upon himself what we call the manifestation of some kind of a mountain, okay? Some kind of a shape temporarily. But God is not a mountain, God is not a man, and God is simply pure light. A light that we cannot even look at. Because that's why when the high priest put his hands up to bless the people of Israel, all the people looked down. They didn't look straight up because the glory would blind them. So they looked down. So God is not a man that he should lie, nor the Son of Man. Okay? So Jesus called himself the Son of Man. So having said that, so my discussion revolved around why these women from different faiths get their prayers answered. The answer actually was very simple, and I'll give you that answer today, is that they had a belief system. Not because they are Muslim, Christian, Jew, etc. Okay? They have a belief system. The belief system, what they believed, caused them to have that thing that they desired. It wasn't because God is merciful to them, even though they're, it's not because they're in some false system and God is merciful. No, that's the biggest lie on this planet that you hear from pastors week in and week out. Church pastors give you this lie every Sunday, by the way. No, God is not like that. Where did the belief system come from? Well, the belief system came from Abraham. It's actually embedded and rooted in the Torah. When God came to Abraham first time, he said, Abraham, leave your country. We are not told if Abraham saw any form of God, but we are told that he saw God in some vision. We're not told what form God was, probably light, and he heard the voice. When he heard the voice, God said to him, leave his country. So he left his country. He comes to Israel. He says to God, I have no children. Even though he had children, by the way. He had sons. But he says, I have no heir. He doesn't say I have no children. He says, I have no heir. And God says, I will give you an heir, but it will be from your wife Sarah. Basically, Abraham had 4 wives, by the way. So one of his wives was Sarah. So God says, I will give you an heir from Sarah. But what does God tell him? He says, believe. So where did the belief system come from? It came from the pages of the Torah. So Abraham believed. So when you want something in life, what do? You believe it first. Then you will get it. So did the other religious systems created the belief? No. It actually came from the Torah. The Torah is where we go back to for the belief system. So the belief comes from the Torah. When God tells you, believe, and God says to Abraham, look at the stars in the sky. Tell me if you can count those stars. And he said, this is how your children. He says, this is how your children will be. They'll be numerous like the stars. You will not be able to count them. But Abraham had to believe it. Abraham could have turned around and said, I'm 99 years old, or I'm 75 years old, and I don't understand what that means. So are you telling me that my son's going to have many children? And Abraham didn't see a son for 25 years, right? So he was 100 when he had the child. So my point is, but God told him simple this. He says, Abraham, believe. And Abraham said, I do. And God said, therefore it is done to you for your belief has given you the righteousness. In other words, if you have a desire to, let's say you want a new car, you have a desire, then you must believe it in order to receive that desire. There's a method and a madness to this. There's a method behind this madness, because if you don't do the method, you don't receive. I told my students not too long ago, I told them to get some money and do a count. And maybe some students thought I've gone crazy. Why would I want to count dollars or whatever currency you use? I told them, get some currency and do a count on it. And they did. Some of them did count. They did it diligently. And I gave them a little exercise. And I told them to do this exercise. And they did it. And they're probably thinking, looks like the Kohen has gone mad. He's asking us to count currency, whatever currency that may be. But no, I wasn't gone mad. There was a purpose behind that madness. And that madness really did have a purpose. I mean, most people may not think so, but actually it did. There was really a purpose behind the madness, for the reason why I asked my students to do the count, and you'll be surprised at the results that we are seeing today. I don't want to tell you a lot in this lecture. I've already spoken quite a bit today. Normally I don't speak that much, as you know. I don't make big lectures now. I make small lectures. But here is the interesting part. What God did, He gave us methods and tools. So I gave a tool to my students and I said, do this. If you do this, you will start to see and manifest money. And I don't know if all my students did that. I don't know. But I know that there were some who diligently did the exercise. And the results are phenomenal. Phenomenal results. Awesome. The results are just awesome. Again, like I said, I'm not I'm in a privileged mode. I cannot tell you exactly what happened, but all I can tell you, those students of mine that listened to me, they did manifest money and large quantities of it. By the way, I was traveling to my students' homes when I was traveling, and I came to one student's house, and I gave him the same exercise, and he just looked at my face like I'm from planet Mars, and I said, what do you think? Do you think that we're supposed to do some kind of religious pose? You think that Torah is about doing a religious pose or wearing a tallit on your head and praying? Is that what you think about Torah? I said, that's baloney. If you think that is Torah, you're clueless what Torah is. Torah is a way of life. Torah is how we live. Torah is how we act. Torah is what we do every day of our life. That's Torah. Torah is not about me wearing a tallit and putting on a tefillin on a Sabbath and saying, let me pray to God now. That's not Torah, by the way. That's just one ritual. And so, anyway, he's like, Kohen, but I've never seen this from anybody. I've never heard this from anybody. I spoke to him a few other things. It's like, I have never heard what you just told me. The different things you showed me and taught me. I've never heard of this from any rabbi. I said, you never will either. I'm the only rabbi in the world. The only Kohen in the world. Only one who teaches this. No rabbis I know that teach this. And no rabbis even go to the depth to get into this of how to bring things in. They talk about Kabbalah, but you don't want to waste your time just with Kabbalah. What's the point of just doing Kabbalah if you can't manifest anything? If you can manifest it, sure, go ahead, do Kabbalah. But I'm talking about manifesting law. Manifesting law should bring things into your life, things that you desire. New car, house, money. That's what you desire. That's what you should bring in. So when I was talking about the different techniques, my student was like, wow, I've never heard of this. I said, that is Torah. That is Torah. I said, listen, I'll leave you with one thing, and I'll leave you all with one thing. I said to my student, all I want you to do is get any beads, you like, 100 beads, 108 beads, whatever you can find. Or even, other things that you can count with. I said, you get the beads and you count every day. Maybe you run if you haven't got too much time, maybe 400 or 500 times. If you got time, maybe 1,000 times. You're just going to do Gimel. That's all. You're just going to repeat Gimel, 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 and you do it for 1,000 times a day. And if you can't do it for 1,000 times a day, you do it for 108 times a day. And so, but I said you must do it consistently. You must say Gimel every day consistently. Sit down quietly and do Gimel. And I said, start seeing the miracles of God. So that's what I will leave you today. Is that we have a faith which is totally opposite to every other religious system on this earth. Totally opposite. And it is absolutely awesome. It's absolutely awesome. I can't describe to you the kind of miracles, the kind of things that I have done with the Torah faith. But having said that, like I said, I'm not going to spend hours and hours here explaining, but I think it is pertinent and enough to say my students who have been with me all these years, they're going to benefit, and they are being benefited tremendously, and they're being blessed tremendously. And I'm so happy for them that those who were with me, they listened, they operated, they did, and they did the tools and techniques, and I helped them along the way, privately, publicly some, and privately more. And they are at a point where they are being blessed tremendously. I'm very happy for them. And so thank you for listening. Have a wonderful Sabbath, a wonderful week ahead. May God bless you all, keep you safe, and be on your right guard. Guard you with His angels. Tada, Shabbat Shalom, Shalom Shalom to you.